qué show, qué show. ¿Cómo están, banda? Espero estén muy, pero muy bien. Hoy, en Grupo Inframundo, en los artistas del Inframundo, tenemos a un invitado especial, muy especial. No manches, banda, es uno de los maestros del horror que estuvo detrás de muchas producciones de Stuart Gordon como Re-Animator, From Beyond, una de mis películas favoritas, Dolls, y también como director de La novia de Re-Animator, Society. Y aparte de eso, también la joya de The Return of the Living Dead 3, la cual está joyísima si no la han visto. Y bueno, banda, acuérdense, prendan los subtítulos para que le puedan entender a todo lo que estamos hablando aquí, que se va a poner poquísima madre. Compartan, denle like, suscríbanse para que así tengamos presupuesto para poner los subtítulos aquí chidos, ¿sale, banda? Y bueno, ya me transformo otra vez en inglés. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing, Santiago?
I am really, really excited for this interview, but really, yeah, I want to talk a lot. I got a lot of questions, and this is a dream come true. So it is incredible, Brian. As I was telling the people, you make one of the best movies for watching in a first date. You know, that movie Society. Obviously, if you put Society with a new girl or boy or whatever, they will be astonished and they will say, I want
You
more.
may lose them.
Yeah. It is incredible. I love it. Well, Brian, first of all, I will want to ask you the first question it will be, well, here in Mexico, there have they have knowledge about what is a producer, but everyone wants to know what is for you, for Brian, what is the role of a producer here there in the United States in the 80s, 90s. For you, what is the role of a producer? What could be like an analogy or something like that in the job of a producer as Brian, you know?
Well, when I began making movies, I had no classes, I had no training. I just wanted to make movies. And so I got a friend to help me. And I asked him, I said, I know what a director does. He says action. I know what the actors do. They act and make the lines. I know what the director of photography does. He shoots it. But what does a producer do? And my friend said, well, you see, the producer is the boss and jefe, and he makes the most money. And I said, okay, I'll be the producer because I like being the boss and I like making the most money. Well, a producer really, in the classical sense, mounts the whole production. In a classical sense, a producer would find the money, develop the script, hire the director, hire the actors, oversee the production, oversee the editing, and then take the movie and try to market it to make the money back. So that's the classical idea of what a producer does. But movies are much more complicated than that. So there's so many producers on it. The bigger the movie, the more producers. And so sometimes there's a producer who's very involved with the production, but has nothing to do with the finance. Sometimes there's a producer who finds the financing or a big star, but really has nothing to do with the project. Sometimes producer credits are given to people who invest money. So there's many kinds of producers. Now in Spain, where I made 10 movies, they have a producer they call el productor ejecutivo, the executive producer. And then they have el productor, who is the producer. In Spain, the producer would be the one who brings the money and is in charge, and the productor ejecutivo would be the one who day to day makes sure that the money is being spent properly, who runs the production with his team. In the United States, it's the opposite. The producer would be the one who is in charge of the production, theoretically, and the executive producer might be the one who brings the money and is a step away. So there's many different ways to produce, but the best way to learn how to produce is to decide to make a short film. Okay, you're going to make a short film. Now, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to find the script or develop the script? Now, most people who make a short film, they want to write it and direct it and edit it and probably shoot it. And maybe they find the money, because if they don't, nobody's going to give them a job to direct. But if you try making a short film, you'll find very soon that somebody has to make sure the money's there. Somebody has to oversee the assistant director, the schedule, find the art department to get the props. Somebody has to be in charge of all that and be responsible for the movie being delivered and finished. That's kind of the producer.
That is awesome. I think it is incredible to you that you tell everyone what is the production like tree. I think it is like a tree of a lot of stuff that everyone can do and relate, and it is incredible. Also for me, the analogy that I have is like the producer. The producer in a short film, that maybe it is something more little or something that one person does everything of production sometimes. It is like the chef, you know? I am the chef and I want to make some tacos, you know? So I need some ingredients, and the ingredients are there, but I need to make the taco. If I am the chef here, so I need to make this taco incredible. I need to deliver it for the person, and the person says something like, oh, this is delicious, I want more, or maybe I want to pay more tacos, stuff like that. So it is incredible because the ingredients could be the actors, the screenwriter, the director, everything. With these ingredients, you can make the most delicious taco, or the most terrifying in the horror industry. But yeah, I think that is awesome. I think that for me it is incredible that you tell us that about the production. Also, well, now I got this question. Well, you have been also a director, which is fascinating. You've been a producer, screenwriter, director, and as a director, you make one of the most, I think, critical movies, that you critique something really incredible with society. And also visually, for me, it is terrific by the practical effects, the story, in how the actors start to relate at the ending. If you haven't watched Society, people, you need to watch it, because wow, this is incredible. The ending, you will be like surreal as hell. Which for Society, how does it start, this production, and you to become the director? How it was, and how did you became the director of this awesome movie? I have this question.
Well, like I told you, I never had any training to be in the movies, no education. I had a restaurant, I built houses, I was a carpenter, I did many different jobs. But when I decided to make movies, I had to learn. And the first thing I did after I tried a amateur film was that I went to Hollywood, went to LA, because I wanted to make a business. I wanted to make a living making movies. And so that's where the business is. And I looked for a director. So I put an ad in the Variety saying horror movie director wanted. Well, eventually I ended up with Stuart Gordon, who was not a movie maker. He was a theater director. He was a director of theater. So together we were going to make a horror movie, Re-Animator. Now I raised the money. I took all my money and I borrowed money to put in the movie. So I was the producer. I hired Stuart. I directed the script. I directed the development. I hired everybody. We made the movie. And then after we made Re-Animator, we made Dolls, as you mentioned. And then we made From Beyond. Now, those two movies, I didn't have to put up any money, because after Re-Animator, the company who distributed it wanted more movies from us. So they paid for it, and we just made the movies. After making 3 movies, unfortunately, the company that I had given Re-Animator to sell was not paying me the money. So then I had to go to the abogados, and I had to go to the juicio, and I had to start legally trying to get my money. And at that point, I couldn't work making movies with that company anymore. So then I tried making a movie with Dan O'Bannon, who made Return of the Living Dead 3, and I mean Return of the Living Dead, and he wrote Alien and many other movies. And we had a very interesting movie back in 1985, I guess it was, 6, called The Men. And this story was about a man, a woman, who discovers that all men are aliens. So this was a great, fun horror movie that had a great deal of oppressive paranoia for the woman to discover such a strange thing. Well, when I finally got the money for that movie, Dan O'Bannon was going to direct. Dan backed out. He didn't want to do it. So then I went, and Stuart was working for the company that I was suing. So I was alone, and I thought, well, I got to make some movies. I have children. I have 4 children. I got to make money. And I was looking for a script. I went to a friend of mine who was starting a small production company. The money was coming from Japanese investors. And one thing I owned was the sequel to Re-Animator. So I thought, well, now I'm not going to depend on a director anymore. I'm going to direct. So I want to be in charge of that too. So I went to my friend and I said, look, I can take the Re-Animator sequel and go to a studio, or I can give it to you to make. But if you make it, then I'm producing and directing and in charge. So I get a chance to direct. But I don't want to make 1 movie, I want to make 2 movies. And the Re-Animator movie will be the second one. The reason I did that is because I thought, what if I make a first movie directing and it's terrible? What if it's a piece of shit? I still need another chance. I can't let that be the only one. So I knew that I would get to make the Re-Animator sequel. First, I would make another movie. They agreed to this. So one day I was coming out of my office and this writer came up to me and he gave me a script called Society. And it had a lot of the same sense of paranoia that The Men did, except it's a teenage boy in a rich family in Beverly Hills. Now, I loved that. And I optioned it and said, let's start working on it. But unfortunately, it didn't have any special effects, nothing weird. It was kind of like a blood cult. And so I said, you know, if I'm going to direct a movie, I like effects. I'm not doing something without a lot of cool stuff to look at. So I tried to think of what effect hadn't I seen that I wanted to see. So I imagined the flesh melding together. And then I worked with the writer to incorporate that into the script. And at the same time, the Japanese investors asked me to meet with Screaming Mad George, who was a Japanese effects artist. He was very surrealistic. We became very fast friends, and we began designing the shunting. And so that's how Society got made.
Wow. That is an incredible story.
But you
I
have to
love it.
remember too, because there was no big company involved, I could do whatever I wanted.
And that's incredible because there sometimes like the production company stuff like that, they tell you like stuff that they want forcefully, or censorship, that was a problem in that time, and nowadays is also a problem. So I think it is incredible. You got all in your hands, so you can decide whatever you want.
Well, it would have been very difficult to make society with a a real movie distributor, because it's just so weird. I don't know that you only can do that with nobody. Even Re-Animator's sequel, Bride of Re-Animator, you could make that with a company because it's a sequel. They say, okay, do whatever you want. It's a gore movie, but society is weird. It would be very difficult to get anybody to accept it.
It is really surrealistic, as you said. But it is awesome. The critique, the final scene, the orgy scene. If you haven't watched Society right now, I am telling you again, go and watch Society. Put pause in this video and go and buy Arrow Video Society because it is awesome. But the thing is that the ending, my God, it is incredible. I was fascinated. And yeah, also for me, it is really interesting. As a director and as a producer, well, the horror creators, we love practical effects. The practical effects are one of the most important organs in a movie of horror for me. What was your experience? I mean, you start with this Stuart Gordon in Re-Animator. There were practical effects, are really cool practical effects, gore stuff, and a lot of bizarre creations. But I don't know, as a producer and then as a director, in your other films, as Bride of Re-Animator, Society, how was your relation with them? I mean, there was a script, there is a decapitated head that suddenly the brain goes out from the head and it starts moving and it starts to talk, something like that. We imagine that is on the script. How did you translate that with the practical effects guys? Because sometimes it is interesting how the relation as a producer and as a director with the practical effects and how you visualize it. I mean, how you
Well,
do
I think
it,
that
how it was, and I
well,
don't
I'm
know,
I'm
something that you want to.
I've always been a fan of the fantastic element in cinema. I like the weird stuff, the stuff that's like a dream, the stuff that you cannot see in the real world. And I'm a big aficionado of effects, from the old Wolfman time-lapse photography to the Ray Harryhausen stop motion monsters to the gore effects of Dawn of the Dead, the Tom Savini, the Dick Smith, the Rob Bottin, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, The Howling, all these effects that became popular, especially in the late 70s and early 80s. They use special kinds of plastics, different kinds of puppetry. And most effects before digital were either a actor in a suit, like the creature from the Black Lagoon, or it would be puppetry, like The Thing. You make mechanical movements to develop the effect. Puppetry really is an acting job by the puppeteer. So a puppeteer can put his hand in a sock and make it come to life. That's the magic of a puppeteer, of an actor. It seems real, it seems very real. that's why it's a little trickier when you get into digital, because now you're into animation and you don't have one performer giving life to a puppet. And I think a lot of the reasons why people today have an appreciation for the practical effects of the 80s and into the 90s is because they recognize that there's an actor doing it. Somebody is giving life to that puppet. Now, the society, if you think about it, the shunting at the end is actually a guy in a suit, except that there's 13 guys in a suit. Under the shunting, there are 13 people acting and giving it life, and many people on top. So that's kind of, the puppetry is a real thing from back in 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Performers were making puppets, either with shadows or with dolls, to tell stories and often to scare people. It comes real. Or they dress up in a suit like the creature from the Lagoon. Well, just look at pictures of indigenous people from 1,000 years ago. They put on suits to become the evil entities and the gods to tell the stories. So this is very traditional. I think where it changes a little is when we get into the CGI, because now we're actually doing animation. And animation is made with lots and lots of people doing frames of film. And then sometimes it's very difficult to make it be convincing. When I would work on a movie, I always depended on practical effects, but I'm happy to add a little digital to make it better. For example, to erase the lines, to erase the poles that are running it, to add a little something, add a glistening in the eye of the puppet. You can mix it up. When I would look at the script, when we were developing the script, I would be developing the special effects at the same time. Because when I'm making a script, I'm imagining the movie. So I'm imagining what I'm going to see based on what I like. Now, that doesn't mean that's where it ends. That's where it begins. So once you have the script and you have all your special effects scenes, what I would do is hire one person to be the supervisor of the effects. And then that person would take the effects and try to break them down to say this effect and this effect could be done by one company. This effect and this effect could be done here. Then we would go to the effects companies, the effects people that we knew, and ask them to give us a proposal. So then we knew what our budget was, we break it down, then they would give us drawings or give their idea of what they would do. And if it was an effect like cutting off a head, cutting off an arm, I would never go to Screaming Mad George because he's too much of an artist. I would go to a company like K&B or some company that will do the traditional job of that. Or if it's cutting off a head, I would go to a young guy who's been working for the big companies and who really wants to do his own thing. And he will take very little money and he will put his heart and soul into it because this is his head getting cut off. So I would mix up the money and give a little here, a little there, and find the people who are the most adequate, always depending on my effects supervisor. You have to depend on the artists that you bring around you. When you make a movie, it's like making an orchestra. You want the best players. You want the best musicians. You don't want it all to be down to your level. You want to get the best people to do the interpretation. So, for example, on Return of the Living Dead 3, Tom Renoni was the name of the effects supervisor. He, for the Riverman in the metal case, the guy who did it wasn't even an effects artist. He was a metal artist. He made metal sculptures. So we made that out of real metal, which for the actor was terrible because it was really cutting him and it was heavy and it hurt. So you would just go to the effects person that you think has the best idea, and of course can do it within the cost of your budget.
It is incredible, yeah. And mostly when these films, one of the best elements that you remember sometimes, obviously the story, obviously the acting, but I think something incredible about the 80s and the 90s in some movies. Also, there are particular movies in the 2000s and 2010 that they have incredible practical effects, and also you watch them until the day of today and they are still disgusting as hell. And that's something incredible, and that's the essence and the life that the persons that are behind that are giving it the magic. Also, as you say in Puppeteer, that is the magic. That's why nowadays, I don't know, like the Dark Crystal series that came out in Netflix, they are puppets and they look real as hell and they're scary as hell, and that's incredible. Also with the digital effects and practical effects, I think we can go again with the analogy of tacos. That you got the practical effect, that is the taco. You got the taco, really delicious, really a great taco, okay. But the thing is that the digital effects, sometimes that can help you to make the taco a little bit more delicious. I don't know, maybe a little bit salty, a little bit spicy. So you put a little bit of salsa, a little bit of sauce in the taco, but you need to put a little bit of sauce. So you need to check out how much sauce you want to put in the taco. And with that sauce, maybe you got the perfect taco. But if you grab the jar of sauce and you start to making this to the taco and you start to deliver every sauce in the taco and it is just a taco of sauce, well, that will not be delicious unless someone is a maniac. But but the thing is that is a problem right now. I think sometimes they like to put a lot of sauce in the taco, too much sauce, that you don't appreciate those kind of things that makes the living effects. I was watching the other day the bride of Re-Animator, and I was watching this scene when the police guy kills the dog, and and then this guy grabs it to the laboratory, and then he starts to making stuff with the dog, and suddenly the girl comes, opens the door, and there is the dog a little bit like with the blood and the cuts and everything, and then there is a hand, and it is like, what the fuck is happening? And that is incredible. That is the magic. Like, you are like disgusted but excited, that you say, wow, this looks incredible. And the scene when the bride grabs the hurt and stuff like that, you're also like, fuck, that hurts. And I think that is the magic of practical effects, that they make you have this feeling. As right now, if I watch Godzilla from 1954 or King Kong, I still believe, I still have this magic. And that is the fascination with practical effects, I think. Yeah, that's incredible. Also, well, talking about this, it will be incredible to have your point of view right now. There is right now here in the world, there are like using the artificial intelligence, the Skynet. The Terminator is real. Yeah, it's real, the Terminator. And the thing is that they are like creating this stuff not only on images, not only on scripts, not only on actors, but they are using it for more stuff like effects. What do you think about right now the artificial intelligence in the filmmaking industry?
I don't know because I don't use it. I'm a little I've seen the results of it. Um, I was working on a project recently, and we had to they made a what they call a pitch deck, which is when you're going to propose a project, you then write about, you give it a treatment, you tell what it's about, and then you give images, maybe 12 pages of images to show you the world, the actors, the world it's in, the tone of it. And all of these images were basically AI generated based on other movies. It was a very gory production, very gory. But there was something very much the same about it. It was a little thin to me. So I think it's probably going to be an incredible tool, right? It's going to be an incredible tool, but I don't think it can supplant, the real thing, the real creative person creating something, or at
Yeah,
least not yet, not yet.
no, not yet. And I hope in the future, no, also no, because I have watched Terminator and RoboCop, and that is not a good, that is not a good ending.
The
But
robots are coming for us. They're coming for us.
yeah. uh, but yeah, that is really true. And I also think that the artist, the producer, the director, the screenwriter, the practical effects guy, the wardrobe, everyone has like a footprint, has a footprint that only that person has a footprint, and that is incredible. Also, the things that you say that looks like kind of identical. There is something there. I understand that is like, I think the footprint from a different person, it is the magic of some movies. So that is incredible. Also, one of the latest, well, one of the last questions, it will be, as a producer, I know you developed on Kickstarter the Tales of Blood Iceland. It was an awesome commercial, by the way, with the tiki and everything. I love it. I wanted a tiki drink after I watched that commercial also. I see everything that you did in Kickstarter. What do you think right now about the productions in the modern era with these things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, the new tools, the new tools for producers? What do you think about them? And also, what do you think about the modern production era? I could say in movies, general movies, but I want to focus it on horror because I think horror is different because there is like a community in horror. I think there is a incredible and wonderful community in horror because yeah, the people, I don't know, I have watched that they try to help each other. The fans are really maniac fans of their characters in horror, their directors, producers, everything. And also, as in your past, I mean, you make the dream team with this Stuart Gordon, Brian Yuzna, Barbara Crampton, Jeffrey Crumbs. I think it is incredible. You got like this dream team in horror community. So what do you think about the modern era and your experience with Kickstarter?
Well, I just helped my friend with the Kickstarter, and if we can make the movie, I'll direct it. And I want to shoot it in Bali, where another friend of mine has a studio. I lived in Indonesia for 3 years and made a couple of movies there. And I really want to make movies using the weird monsters of Indonesia. They just have the weirdest monsters. So I thought, I love this project because it is I like this. I want to see this movie, you know?
I want to watch it too.
It's also from the Kickstarter.
Wow, it looks amazing. Amazing.
So
Love
it's
it.
a, we made the comic so that you could, so that you could see what the movie would be like,
Awesome. Yeah.
So this is, for me, is I'd like to make this movie. Kickstarter paid for the comic, but it's not going to pay for the movie. It's a lot of work. Kickstarter is a lot of work. You got to work all the time. You got to deliver stuff, but it's not enough money to make a movie, but it's enough money to make a comic book or something. I'd love to make this movie. It's just a matter of, getting the financing. Now, in the movie business in general now, it's very difficult to make a horror movie and to get your money back. Now, back in the 80s and 90s, before digital, when everything was VHS and the DVD, well, you had to have the physical copy. You had to buy it or rent it from the video club. Now everybody expects to get everything for free. Also, we were always shooting with film. It costs a lot of money. You need people professional. Now you can take your phone, shoot a movie. You don't need any lighting. You don't need anybody who's professional to be involved. You could just make a movie. The problem is, of course, who's going to pay to see it? How do you monetize it? You're going to monetize it by putting it up on YouTube? Everybody wants everything for nothing. So that means the budgets get littler and littler and littler. If you're lucky, of course, I think most people do these micro budget movies because they want somebody to see their movie so they can be discovered as a great talent. And then they're going to hire them to do the next Spider-Man movie. It's a tryout, but making a movie is kind of like trying to win the lottery. Be very careful with how much money you spend, and be careful that you make sure it's very professional, that it's really going to get your attention and keep it going. It's a tough business.
Yeah, sure it is. I think, wow, it is incredible this hearing from you. And that's right. Yeah. Yeah. A really good analysis. And I think, yeah, the Kickstarter, Indiegogo is something really difficult, and I have watched a lot of projects. I was one of the persons that were involved in the to put money in Search of the Darkness, the documentary, which is really cool also. And yeah, that was a lot of time, and it required, obviously, when In Search of Darkness Part 1 came to, well, start to the to show in some places, and the people that found it, that start to make to recite their Blu-rays, DVDs, stuff like that. Now the persons, the investors say, "Oh my God, this is a real quite business. This gives money," so they start to invest, and then the part 2 and the part 3, and it is awesome. But yeah, it is something really, I think, difficult, but that, yeah, it can be achieved. We can do it, as you said. That is incredible, and I hope that comic sometime comes to life, because wow, it looks amazing. It looks
Me too.
incredible, and
Me
I
too.
need
I would
some.
love to do it. I would
Yeah,
love to do it.
and also we need that tiki drink that you were drinking in that commercial, because it looks really tasty. Well, Brian, this will be the last question, and I think, well, you have telling us a lot. I think this is like a master class of product direction and production horror stuff. But this in this segment in Group Underworld, in Grupo Inframundo, We call this segment Artists from the Underworld. You know, this is the segment called Artists from the Underworld, and we'd like to interview people that are and were in the business of horror. You know, as a director, as an actor, as a producer, a screenwriter, or maybe you are like making products, services, but are related with horror, you know? So in this segment, we try to make those interviews, not only for the entertainment, that is really cool, but also to try to inspire more people to create horror. So one of our missions is to try to deliver those advices to the people. And right now, you give some, but which will be your last advice? Imagine that Brian Yuzna needs to give the last advice for horror filmmakers, like their most essential advice.
I think maybe one of the things I feel is most important is that if you're going to do anything, if you're going to make a cheap movie for no money on your phone, if you're going to make masks to sell of horror figures, if you're going to try to distribute the horror movie, if you want to be an actor in it, I think the most important thing is be very, very serious about it. Don't, just because you don't have any money doesn't mean you shouldn't have a professional height. You should be very professional and try to be the most serious you can about making it a professional product. And to do that, one of the things you should do is ask advice. Ask advice not only of your friends, but of people who have done what you want to do. And just listen to them. Don't think that you can make your own choice, of course, make your own choice. But if you're going to write something, study how you write a script. Show your script to other people, not just your friends, but to people who you can contact who are professional. Ask their advice. Try to make sure that that script is a very seriously professional script, the best you can do. And the same goes for producing, directing, selling, acting. Just don't take it lightly. Don't make it a game. Think of it as like, this is real work. It should be great fun if you love it, but be very serious about it.
Wow, that is incredible. I almost cry because yeah, it is really true.
I'm talking to
So,
you because you're getting ready to make a movie.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you very much, Brian. It was an incredible interview.
Send me the email. Hey, it was fun to be on your show, Santiago.